Good morning, everyone. I'm Chef Dina Altieri. Welcome to Chef in the Garden. So today I'm going to show you how to use local cantaloupe to make a very fresh salsa. You're going to be given a half of a cantaloupe in your box, and what we want to make sure that you do is carefully rinse the cantaloupe in cool running water and use a produce brush to essentially kind of loosen any debris that might be on the outside or the external rind of the cantaloupe. So let's make the salsa. So the first thing we really want to make sure of is that we're using the knife safely. When you're using your knife, one of the things you always want to think about is how you're gripping it. Professional chefs usually call this a pinch grip, pinching the top of the knife and then grabbing it. One of the reasons why we do that is so that when we're cutting, the wrist is able to move nicely. The other thing that's important is what my left hand is doing. So I use my right hand with my knife, but my left hand is also really important. It's essentially guiding where my cuts are. My fingers are not extended. My fingers are actually rolled back a little bit so that the knife itself is touching my knuckle. That prevents your fingertips from getting any kind of action against the blade of that knife, right? The idea is to cut the fruit, not your fingers. So the first thing we're going to do is work on the cantaloupe. So first, cutting a nice smooth slice off the top and the bottom so that what we have is a nice support so that the cantaloupe will not wobble on the cutting board when we go to peel it. Once the cantaloupe is peeled, we're going to end up with planks that we've sliced that then will be cut into strips and then further taken down to that dice. So the cantaloupe and the jicama and the cucumber are all cut in that small dice configuration. So everything follows that pattern. Planking, cutting into strips, and then cutting into cubes. Next, we have another really great seasonal ingredient, which is cucumbers. When we're working with the cucumber today, we're gonna make sure that we, again, wash it, and we're gonna peel it. And once we have the peeled cucumber, we're gonna cut off sort of the top and the bottom. It's important after you cut the cucumber to go ahead and use a small spoon to essentially pull the seeds out of the middle to make like a little canoe. Don't worry about getting every single bit of that out, because actually the sweetest part, the most tasty part, is right up there against that seed. So you're really just looking for visible seed removal. And again, look at that pinch grip, really holding onto that knife. I don't want you to be wobbling with it or have your finger up on top there, because that's gonna be a little unsafe. So I'd love that pinch grip. Get a good hold of your knife and keep your non-knife hand, keep those little fingertips tucked back. So in this recipe, there's two different types of chili. We have a jalapeno, which is a fresh chili, but then also we have, some chili powder. The chili is providing spiciness, right? It's providing heat. The heat is essentially mostly found in the seeds and in that little white membrane inside the chili pepper. So when you're doing this recipe, if you and your family like it hot, keep the seeds in there. Keep that little white membrane or pith in there. If you like things a little bit more mild, you can go ahead and you can trim it out. I'd also recommend you add a little bit of chili and then taste it, and a little more and taste it, right? Because that heat builds. One bite, you think, wow, it's great. After 2 or 3 bites, that heat starts to essentially build a little bit and become maybe a little bit overwhelming. So start in small increments and then kind of add from there. When it comes to adding the dry chili that is ground in this chili powder, this presents itself as more of like a drier heat. There's a difference in vibrancy between fresh chilies and dry chilies. So it's fun to play with both of them. Try a little jalapeno and a little bit of chili powder in the recipe. Taste it. Wow, I love it. Or, ooh, it's a little bit spicy. We'll go ahead and grab a little bit more cantaloupe and dice a little bit more cantaloupe to cut a little bit more sweet fruit in there to cut that spice if you need to. So it's always a balance when you're cooking. The thing you're looking for is full flavoredness. So when you take a bite of what you're preparing, which in this case is salsa, you want to be able to taste the sweet and a little bit of the sour. One should not overpower the other, right? It should all be harmonious. So next is another great ingredient grown locally, which is the green onion. So make sure that you do give this a rinse before you use it and shake it dry a little bit, because one of the things that's difficult is it's sometimes hard to cut something when it's really sort of soggy and wet. We're going to hold our knife on what's called the bias, which means slanted. Instead of being straight, we're going to use that knife on a slight angle. What's nice about it is you'll end up with open, sort of slanted cuts. And when we're cooking, what's nice about that is you open up a little bit more surface area. So the more you're using that sort of slanted cut, the more you're opening up the surface area. And that, again, is called bias slicing. One of my favorite ingredients, cilantro. It has a leading role in the salsa because it provides a little bit of bitterness and a little bit of herb to the salsa, and it rounds out that sweetness. Now, when you're picking through the cilantro, make sure that you recognize that there's part of the stem that's towards the bottom of the bunch that's a little bit thicker. If it's chopped up in the salsa, you're going to end up kind of feeling those harsher, more fibrous parts. So because this salsa stays chunky and everything that you cut you're going to feel in terms of its texture, I would remove that abrasive, sort of fibrous bottom stem just because of the mouthfeel, and I would focus more on the tender stem of the top and then those leaves as well. We call cilantro a soft herb. Soft herbs, the more you cut them, the more you're bruising them. We want the salsa to look pretty, right? So if we really kind of bruise that herb, it'll oxidize. It'll get really brown, and then it won't look bright and vibrant and green. So sharp knife, not damp, and just cutting through just a little bit. So when I do the cilantro, I only cut it twice. You can still see it's very fluffy. I let it dry properly, right? So it's still a little bit fluffy, and it's very, very green, which is where we want it to be for the salsa. So now we're ready to assemble everything. One of the things that's good is just to go back through that recipe card and just sort of double check and make sure that you've got everything. We need 2 cups of melon peeled and small diced. We need a half a cup of cucumber peeled and small diced. We need a 1/4 cup of jicama peeled and small diced. You need 1 green onion thinly sliced. Honey, 2 to 3 limes, the coarse salt and the chili powder, and then the chopped cilantro. We're going to use this bowl because we think this bowl is big enough. Be mindful of the volume that your bowl can capture when you're doing this. So here we have our beautiful diced cucumber and our melon and our jicama all mixed in like that. Next ingredient is our jalapeno. Remember that I minced it, cut it really small so that when we get bursts of the jalapeno, the chili in there is a little bit of a smaller note whenever you get it as a bite. We're gonna add our cilantro. We're gonna add our green onion. Okay, so you get to see all the color that's happening there. Now, when we juice our limes, give it a good squeeze and let your hand sort of be the colander there so that any of the seeds that are in that lime are essentially staying in the lime and not ending up in your salsa. Okay, salt. So what I would do with the salt is I would use a spoon, because what happens if you add a little too much? It's kind of hard to take it out, right? Same thing with the chili. To taste. Honey. So I'm almost ready to taste, which is the best part. But look at all that color. Look at how the fruits and the cucumber and the jicama, everything, same size. Next, we're gonna see Mr. Pikle show us how to grow the cantaloupe in our own gardens.
Hi, I'm Mr. Pikle. Today I want to show you how to plant the melon plants that you've gotten in your kit. So this is a melon plant, and one thing to keep in mind with the melon plant is it likes to crawl. This is the kind of plant that's going to kind of want to move around a little bit on the ground, and then it'll grow its melons that way. One thing you got to do is dig a hole that's about the same size. So take the plant, just turn it upside down. This is the easiest way. Squeeze the sides if it's not coming out very easy. It looks like there's a lot of roots on the sides here that are kind of stuck. They can't grow out. So I'm just going to scratch them a little bit just to tell them they can grow outward at this time. And then just get it in the ground. Put it at the same level. Just kind of pat it in a little bit, and it's ready to go. You can put them in a pot, put them in some place that gets a fair amount of sun, and just water it daily. After it blooms, then it'll start giving you the melon. So just wait for that to happen and good luck. This will be fun.
So now we're ready to eat. Thank you for watching Chef in the Garden, and let's take a look. Mmm, delicious.